Can you?
Is it on? The audio?
No, it's on.
Okay, Helma, Nancy, can you hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Nancy, Helma, Siti Salwa, can you hear me? It's working fine just now. Oh, shoot. Can you get?
Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You can hear me. All right, great. Helma, you are the first presenter. I just want to make sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Are you ready? We do not have a live audience right now. Oh no, she's leaving. I think she got disconnected. Okay, sorry, patience, everybody. Our first presenter had to leave, so I guess that means that she's having a few difficulties. So we'll just wait for her to come back. So let me. Our first presenter is having some technical difficulties. So we'll wait for her to come back. Nancy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Nancy? She's not paying attention because she's not here. If it started on time, she would have, oh, maybe she'd have been cut off halfway. I don't know where she's presenting from. By the way, you did a great job emceeing yesterday. Good job, very clear, very, well paced.
Oh, thank you.
How was it at the convention center?
It was great. I think there was a bit of a technical issue as well. Because it was mostly like to do with Chin House, controlling like the whole thing. Just sometimes the camera just goes. It won't pan out to the right direction. And then there's some issues with connection as well.
Okay, she's back. Yeah. All right, great. Helma, can you hear me now? Are you ready to start? We do not have a live.
Yes, I can hear you now, Dr. Christina.
Excellent, that's great. So we do not have a live audience, so I'm just going to sit here and share from the laptop as if it's an online session. So you can share the screen. If later on we do have live audience, I will be moving to face the camera so that they can see me and you can see me as well. Okay, so don't get startled if I move. All right?
Okay, Dr. Christina.
Okay, so you can, I'll introduce you now and then you can start sharing. Okay? First presenter this morning. Welcome to Ms. Helma Malini, and the title of her presentation is Small and Medium Enterprises Halal Literacy Measurement During COVID-19 Pandemic. Oh shoot, she's leaving. Oh no. Frustrating. Okay, sorry, patience, please, everybody, while Helma comes back in. Do you think we can go to the next presenter first, Nancy, and then while Helma sorts out her thing? Would that be a good idea or no?
There's never said anything wrong. Yeah, but I think we have to inform.
Here we go. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes,
right.
yes, Dr. Christina.
Okay. Where are you, Helma? Where are you right now?
I'm in Indonesia, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, all the best. I will be keeping time. You have 20 minutes for your presentation. And I will let you know If you have not wrapped up in 20 minutes time, I will let you know. Okay? And then we will take some questions. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Christina. Hi, everyone. My name is Toma Makrini. I'm from Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Tanjung Pura. Actually, it is located in Pontianak, Indonesia. So I will start share screen, my slide. I hope everyone can see my slide now.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Christina. Okay. So the title of my research is Small and Medium Enterprises Halal Literacy Measurement during COVID-19 pandemic. So the idea of this research is based on the background of the literacy that currently happening in Indonesia. So Indonesia is known to be the populous Muslim population in Indonesia. So Dr. Christina, I'm sorry, there's back noise. Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear. Yes, it's fine.
Oh, okay. So I think I'm going to use my headphones.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So the idea is based on the data that we have the most Muslim majority here in Indonesia, and then there is a growth of Islamic economic also in Indonesia. Although we have a lot of Muslim population, but in the practice we are still keeping up with particularly another either it is Muslim country or non-Muslim country in terms of halal literacy. So, for example, in Indonesia, there is a growing number of industry in terms of food and beverages, cosmetic and pharmaceuticals, banking and finance, garment and fashion, hotel and tourism, then others that not listed above. However, if you are asking whether it is Muslim and non-Muslim people in Indonesia, perception of halal, just going to answer it is mostly talking about whether food containing pork or not. So the halal perception is only about pork and then associated with food and beverages only, while in the practice, the industry are basically around the aspect of cosmetic, pharmaceutical, banking and finance, garment and fashion, and then hotel and tourism. And then if we are take a look at the data of SMEs in Indonesia from 2018 and then 2019, there is a huge number of SMEs in Indonesia, particularly in the level of small and medium enterprises. So in the percentage of market share, there are about 99% business, particularly SMEs, are from small or micro business that is covering around 98%. If you go to Indonesia, you can shop in the street. We call it a street vendor. Of course, we can find it in Malaysia as well. But in Indonesia, the number is quite a lot. So if you go to the street vendor and then if you ask them whether they have a standard SOP of health and procedures from the Ministry of Trade and then Health from Indonesia, they will saying they don't have any. Then if you ask whether they have a small halal certificate from related institution, and they will saying they have none of that certificates. But you can see at their trucks or at their food vehicles, you can find the logo of halal that they made by their own, like stickers where they can print it in the small photocopy in the street or something like that. So the issue of halal is Indonesia is quite becoming a hot issue because in terms of industry, there's a lot of number that not associated with halal. Okay, so we're moving on the proposed theoretical framework of my research, where I'm going to, I was measure the halal literacy of SMEs in Indonesia, where the focus is SMEs, particularly the micro business, because they are the one who doesn't have enough funding, and then they are the one who doesn't have proper access either to the capital from the government, including from the knowledge from business, and then including knowledge of halal literacy. And then I'm focusing on the attitudes of toward halal, where later you can see that there are 3 attitudes that develop on this research. And then the result while trying to see whether there is an improvement toward economic resilience if the SMEs understand about the halal literacy. Okay, the methodology that I use for this research is survey. I'm surveying 150 respondents using purposive sampling technique. The sample was composed of owners of SMEs in Indonesia between the ages of 19 and then 45. The age group used as sampling criterion is determined by the differences that may exist between age group and generation. And then the questionnaire were developed based on the attitudes of these 3 attitudes. Basically consists of halal attitudes, halal behavior, and halal knowledge. And then the attitudes were taken from the definition of Encyclopedia of Prohibition, chapter on food by Sheikh Salim bin Eid al-Hilali from 2015 books that he wrote. So the emphasis of the understanding of basic halal is basically we want to find out whether the SMEs, particularly the owner and then the practitioner, have possessed this knowledge based on behavior, knowledge, and attitudes. And then the criteria were measures if they are answering more than 80%. So it means they have a good literacy. If less than 60%, they have not proper literacy. So these are the descriptive statistic or the preliminary findings. We can see that based on the each item, there are for halal number 1 where the moderation of question is low, so it's quite easy. Most of the respondents are giving false answers. So it's quite interesting why do at the beginning they are already given the false question. When if we take a look at the question, we start with the general description of the halal itself. So most of the people, including the seller, thinking that halal is only in food, not the whole concept of the halal where we are talking about maqasid al-syariah, where it is not associated only with pork or non-pork, but how is it the halal itself able to improve the transparency and then fairness. So if we're talking about SMEs, we are talking about if they even already do they already provide a standard healthy procedures, like how they treat their customers, and then how do they manage their food packaging. So the whole concept actually really related to the idea of sustainability. And then if we moving on to the question of halal until 8, where the level of difficulties is quite difficult. So you can see that their respondent are being abstain as well. we understand that the question is quite difficult for them. And then the descriptive statistic continue, and then this is the classification or the result of the halal literacy measurement, where we can see this classification is based on the finance literacy, where frequently these model are used to measure the literacy of finance, particularly here in Indonesia. And then I use this as well for the classification of halal literacy, where if they are achieving 25%, it means they are not literate, and then 50% is less literate, and then 75% sufficient literate, and then 100% they are well literate. And then the results are showing that most of the street vendor, I'm not showing it here, most of the street vendor are on the level of 75%, where the SMEs in Indonesia are being sufficient literate. The major cause, like I said earlier on, that mostly they are thinking that halal is associated with food only, where if it is not contain pork, then it is halal. So the result implication, we are aiming for the government to provide a sufficient socialization, particularly for the SMEs in terms of halal literacy. So that is my research and my presentation. I will give it back to our moderator, Dr. Christina. Thank you so much.
And we do have some online participants as well. So I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions from the floor. Okay, if there are no questions for now, I'll just start off with a question of my own. So I was wondering, you mentioned that you surveyed 150 people, is that right, Salma?
Yes.
So did you, after the survey, how did you do the survey? Was this hard copies of a survey, or how did you conduct it?
Yeah, unfortunately, we want to conduct it online, but most of these SMEs are not digital literacy, so we hand it the hard copy directly to them.
Okay, and were you there while they filled it out?
Yeah.
And did you follow up the survey with interviews?
No, because the situation is not possible. Like last year, we are still in the midst of pandemic, so we only hand over the hard copy of the questionnaires.
I see. Okay. How was the reaction of your respondents? Were they happy to complete the survey, or were they worried, or any of that?
Well, actually, they are happy, but at the beginning, they are asking several questions, mostly related whether they will have another follow-up, like having an education from government related this matter, particularly about halal itself.
So you mentioned earlier that you were waiting for the government to do something about this halal literacy. Do you feel that there could be other organizations that could help with this, or is it only the government that can help?
Well, actually, this research were the another derivation of my research with students that building the application of halal literacy. So the app were funding by our government, were funded by our government, and then this is just a preliminary research. We want to find out whether this halal literacy are already in the whole area and then aspect of our economy. So the finding are not only for the government, but also for the startup that met as the initial stage of the another research that were funded by the government.
Sorry if I missed it, but which city or where were these respondents located?
Well, actually, the location, we want to have it in the major big cities in Indonesia, but we can only have the questionnaire distributed in Pontianak and then Jakarta.
Okay. So do you intend to cover more major cities in Indonesia?
Yeah, of course, because there are differences of behavior of SMEs, particularly in the area of Java Island, because they have a really different structure of demography and then culture as well compared to the other city in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you. So are there any other questions from anybody? Not from our live audience? Do you have a question, Jocelyn?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, my assistant Jocelyn has a question, so she's going around to the camera and she's going to ask the question.
Hi, so I'm just curious, like the vendors, the SMEs that you have surveyed, are they all Muslim vendors?
70% is Muslim, and then the rest is non-Muslim. Jaslyn.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaslyn.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Nancy, do you have a question for Helmer? All right. Okay, thank you very much, Helmer.
Thank you, Dr. Christina.
Very interesting presentation. I never ever thought about halal literacy, but this is something really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christina.
Okay. All right. Just give me a moment, Nancy. Just give me a moment, okay? Thank you. Not to worry. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Our next presenter is Ms. Nancy Darius, and her title is The Cruise Kit, Creative Writing Using Songs. That sounds very interesting indeed. We do have 2 live audience here, and we have a few online as well. Over to you, Nancy.
Right, thank you, Dr. Christina. Very good morning, everyone. Before I start with my presentation, allow me to introduce myself. Okay, my name is Nancy Darius, and I am an English teacher at Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching, Sarawak. And today I will be sharing with all of you the cruise kit. which stands for Creative Writing Using Songs. So let us begin. The Cruise Kit, it is a pedagogical innovation that works as an alternative kit for teachers. Pedagogical innovation stands for the implementation of new or different ways in the process of teaching and learning that promotes meaningful learning among the learners. It is suitable for all secondary school students from the age 13 to 17 and also for secondary school English teachers. The Cruise Kit is to help teachers to create fun, interesting, and creative writing lessons in the classroom. For the objectives, there are four. Okay? The first one is to improve students' writing skill. Writing skill is one of the crucial language skills to be acquired by students, especially nowadays. Okay? As the new SPM English paper is aligned with CFR, it is important for our students to be able to achieve at least B2 or to score at least A in the upcoming SPM examination. And in order to achieve this, they must first improve their writing skill. Second is to promote and encourage higher order thinking skills among our students. Higher order thinking skills, or HOTS, is a new concept of education reform based on Bloom's taxonomy. The concept concentrates on the student's understanding in learning process based on their own methods. Through HOTS questions or activities, students will be trained to think creatively, critically, and innovative. Third, to bring creative and fun activities in writing lessons. And as a teacher myself, I have been teaching for 11 years now. Writing is a tedious skill to learn and to teach. For some students, English is a challenging subject. It is not a second language. It is more to a foreign language. So it is a challenging subject, and let alone learning to write in this foreign language for some can be very difficult. Thus, to me, it is very important for teachers to find ways to have creative and fun activities in writing lessons so we can encourage and motivate our students to learn to write and not to be feared by the process. And number four, as the adjective for number four, to help English teachers to plan and execute writing lessons the fun ways. As a teacher myself, I understand the struggles and challenges teachers face nowadays, especially in this new norm because of the pandemic. We want to have all these interesting activities in our own classroom, but when you have so many things on your plate, such as reports, documentation, filing, it sometimes seems to be impossible to have creative activities. But with the Cruise Kit, it will help teachers to have fun and interesting writing lessons without spending too much time preparing on it. Because to me, for myself, in my personal opinion, I believe that English should be taught and learned in fun ways. It should not be, for example, in our own classroom, it should not be a very stressful process. It should be enjoyable. Right? Okay, moving on. As for the target group, okay, as I mentioned earlier, the Cruise Kit is suitable for all secondary school students from Form 1 to Form 5 and also secondary school English teachers. Right? As for the issues, the issues or problems I face prior to this innovation. The first one, students' preparedness is a problem in learning to write. Somehow, students always have difficulties to write during class. Some of them can't even start writing the first few sentences without the teacher's help. Some will even take forever to start their first sentence. Okay, when I saw this in my own classroom, I realized that my students are not ready to write because they are lacking ideas and are not ready to write even their first paragraph. Lack of ideas and limited vocabularies suggested to me that my students have minimum exposure to books and reading materials. Okay, so they are not having the ideas to write, and they don't have the vocabulary to start writing. So which brings us to our second issue, lack of exposure to books and reading materials. Students are spending less and less time reading English books or any reading materials. That will help them tremendously in their writing paper, especially now because students, they are at home. They have been at home for almost 2 years. They are not in school. So I don't think that they spend too much time on books. They are spending more time on their phone. Okay. So, but reading also helps students to learn different sentence structures, such as compound sentence, complex sentence, or compound complex sentence, which definitely will come in handy when writing an essay. When they read less, they are unable to develop their vocabulary, which then will hinder them to write an outstanding out-of-the-box essay. Because for SPM level, in terms of writing paper, the most important criteria to score very high marks in writing paper is the ability to write a very creative, interesting, out-of-the-box essay. If the students, they only write a very cliche writing, even though their grammar and vocabulary are on point, but they will have less marks in terms of the content. So creativity is very important when it comes to writing. Lack of desire. When students are not ready to write due to lack of ideas and vocabulary, they will have lack of desire and motivation to learn. This is when you have students sleeping in class, playing truant, or simply doing their own thing while teachers are teaching. They are not engaged in the lessons as they are feeling lost. They can't relate to the activities as they don't know how, and at the end of the day, everyone, teachers and students, will be frustrated because of the process. And that is why I come up with the cruise kit in order to help English teachers to create interesting writing lessons. All right, moving on. Now we shall look at the content of the cruise kit. So overall, this is what it will look like. You will have the first page. This is the content, and this is one of the lessons, which I will explain more after this, right? Okay. So overall, the cruise kit, it consists of 10 creative writing activities using 10 different songs. But overall, I have used more than 30 songs. It's just that for this cruise kit, I choose 10 songs only. So as you can see here, I use songs from Bruno Mars to Justin Bieber, classic old songs from Simple Plan, Hoobastank, and also Queen. Okay. In terms of the songs, I use songs like Just the Way You Are, Count on Me by Bruno Mars, This Is Me by Kiala Settle, Can't Take My Eyes Off You by Frank Valli, and even Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Sounds impossible, but not in my classroom. Right, so these are all the lessons, right? So next, in every lessons, teachers will be provided with these items. All of these are compulsory to be added in our lesson. For example, civic education. This is a must for English subject right at this moment. Language and grammar focus. For example, this one, the students are going to write informal letter. Cross-curricular elements, thinking strategy such as think, pair, share, numbered hats, gallery walk, round robin, or roving ambassador. The thinking tools, thinking maps, either it's the I Think, or in our school we use Tony Buzan's map, 2 stars and a wish, KWL chart, and also the assessment and evaluation tools. Okay, whether it's self-assessment or peer assessment. So this will be provided for the teachers. Okay, all right, next one. This is the lesson plan. So in every lesson plan, the teachers will be provided with this. First is the song. For example, lesson 7. The topic is You Are Not Alone, song by Justin Bieber, Lonely. The learning objectives, the success criteria, the content and the learning standard. This is taken from the CFR syllabus, suggested activities, and also the resources required. For the suggested activities, okay, teachers may follow and implement all of them, but they also can choose or they can change some of the activities based on the students' proficiency level. For example, for this one, even though we use the song from Justin Bieber, Lonely, it is actually about depression. So we are learning and we are sharing about depression among teenagers. Okay, so because nowadays, as we know that students, they are prone to be depressed because of all the challenges or the problems at home. So when they listen to the song, they can actually relate to it and they can talk about being depressed. Even if they're not depressed, maybe they are stressed. For example, in our school, because they have so many on their plates, their timetable is always full. They have to be ready before 6 a.m. in the morning and everything finish at 10 p.m. So it can be quite stressful. So when they are learning with songs, it actually helps them to release that pressure, that stress. Okay. And as for the resources, I have prepared all the required supplementary teaching materials in the form of website links, YouTube, and also Google Drive. So in this Google Drive, I have provided more materials for teachers. Okay, for example, if they want to use one of the lesson, they can just click on the links given, okay, for example, in the Google Drive, and they can use all these materials to help them in their writing class. Okay, for example, this is for lesson 7, so we have all of this. And here I have put more links so that teachers, they don't only use 1 or 2 resources, they have more to choose from. For example, this one, depression, sign of symptoms of depression, because we do have students with depression in our school, so it's really important to actually explain and to enlighten the students about this topic. It is very sensitive topic, but unfortunately it happens. Now we look at the impact. So before the innovation, the cruise kit, based on the survey I conducted with my Form 4 students, 4 Beta and 4 Gamma of Sekolah Menengah Sains Kuching, it is clear that more than half of the students are having issues in writing class. They see reading as the easiest skill to learn and writing as the hardest. Based on the feedback, I can conclude that writing is not something they enjoy the most, as it requires time to think of the ideas, to construct the sentences, grammar and vocabulary knowledge, and how to structure a good essay in order to score high marks. For example, this one feedback, writing is not that easy because it takes a lot of time to think for ideas, especially for essays. Not only that, it is very tiring to write for a long period. Students are also more prone to make errors and mistakes in writing. This makes them easily lose marks in the exam. Right? So this is before the innovation. Right. This is the students' achievement for writing skill in the classroom-based assessment, PBD. Okay, this is something that the teachers need to check and to test there are 4 phases actually in 2021. So based on this one, from phase 1 to phase 2, okay, at the end of the second phase, right, only 28 out of 52 students managed to score band 6, which is the highest band in CFR for writing skill. Unfortunately, this is still a very low achievement, considering that our students in SM Sains Kuching are considered to be the chosen ones. They are the best of the best, because in order to enter our school, they need to go for interview and tests. So for only 28 students to achieve band 6, to me that is quite low. After the innovation, okay, now the impact, 85 respondents agreed that songs help them to think creatively in their writing. So based on the survey, I can conclude that songs help students to be creative and imaginative, help them to learn new words and different sentence structures, and most importantly, they enjoy the process. For example, I take this one. Songs can resonate something within yourself and sometimes help you to express your thoughts better and even help you to think as if you are a philosopher. And this one, personally, I've been learning English through social media growing up, and I don't really like learning English by the book. Songs is one of the way that I used to learn English growing up, and it really helped me with to show sentences, because as we know that in English we have to tell sentences and to show sentences. Okay, like I said, songs has really deep meaning, so it really helps to make my essay more interesting and deep. Okay, so this is the impact after the innovation. This is the classroom-based assessment, right? From phase 1 to phase 4, the final phase. Okay, so at the end of the last phase in 2021, 42 out of 52 students managed to score band 6, the highest band in CFR. Okay, so this is an outstanding achievement to me because overall 81% of the subjects managed to exceed expectations of the curriculum target. Okay, the 10 more students, because there are 52 subjects, so the 10 students, they actually do not participate in the online classes because of internet connections. So I cannot assess them just like I assess the other students. Hence, only 42 students achieved band 6 for the final phase. Yeah? Okay. Besides that, okay, my students, 4 Beta and 4 Gamma, they also succeeded in various English language competitions, activities and programs from district to international level from June 2021 to October 2021. For example, essay writing competition, poetry writing competition, article trailer, dare to spell, sketch competition. For international level, we participated in the Sponge campaign under Korean UNESCO, LibApp Global Learning. This one, 12 of my students are global ambassadors now. 2 of my students managed to be accepted for the Kennedy Luger Youth Exchange and Study Semester Program to USA. It's an exchange program. Marshall Cavendish Education English Writing Competition, Asia Kakehashi 2021-2022 program to Japan, also an exchange program. One student, she's already there. And Fully Residential School International Symposium 2021. This one we managed to get Platinum Award and also the first place for our category, which is economic. So all of this is the impact to me because they have managed to think creatively on their own, and hence they managed to score, they managed to get all of this success. Right now, the students' feedback, because I would like to share some feedbacks from my students in terms of their response and their views on using songs in the classroom.
Can you counter to reshare?
Nancy, we can't hear the audio. Can you try again?
Reshare the screen with audio.
Yeah, what you need to do is reshare your slides or that audio screen. When you share it, it says with computer audio. I think you need to click that. Yep, so go out of it first and then come back in. When you come back in with the slide, when you come back to share, I mean, you don't leave, you just stop sharing first. Then you start sharing. When you start sharing, you're going to see this thing with computer audio. So you say, you click yes. Try that.
Let me try once again.
Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, we can't hear it. So, are you done with the presentation? Is this your last part?
Not yet.
Okay, so yeah, it's fine. I believe you. I believe that this student is saying that he had a good time. You can just summarize briefly what he said and continue because you've only got a few more minutes left.
Right. So this is one of the feedback, all right, and this one also. This one. And this one. Okay, so as you can see, I've used different songs in my classroom. All right, besides that, okay, on the 2nd and 4th of December 2021, I attended SALAS, Sarawak English Language Education Symposium in Cebu, Sarawak, and was given the chance to share the cruise kit with the participants during the parallel session. So I would like to share some of the feedback I got from the teachers regarding the cruise kit. Okay. So I have received 12 responses from teachers all the way from Kuching, Sarike, Kapit, and also from Long Bedian in Baram, Sarawak. Okay, so and these are the feedbacks I got. Okay, so based on this, I can conclude that the cruise kit is well received and hopefully will help these teachers in their own writing lessons. Right. Okay, so these are the feedbacks. As for the potential, okay, so to me, the cruise kit, it is simple and easy to use as teachers can simply teach one of the activities anytime, anywhere without any hassle. It is adaptable. Okay, I believe all teachers should be able to teach and deliver any lessons from the kit because they have everything before they need before the lessons. It saves time. Okay, teachers, as everything is good to go, teachers do not have to spend extra time to plan their writing lessons as they can simply bring this kit in the classroom and start teaching. And lastly, the cruise kit is also allows teachers to have fun and effective ways of teaching writing. This will bring positive vibes in the classroom and students will gain so much more from this. Okay. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for this opportunity. And I do hope teachers out there will try one of the lessons in the cruise kit. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to open the floor now to any questions from the audience here. Okay, we have a question here. Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Nice to meet you. Okay, I'm Miss Lau from Bintulu. So I just want to know that do you face any challenge when you're teaching using the songs to your students?
Pardon me, can you repeat the question?
Okay, I just want to ask, do you face any challenges when you are using the songs to teach the students?
Oh yeah, okay. Thank you so much for the question. Sometimes yes, especially if the song is too difficult for the students to understand. For example, when I use Bohemian Rhapsody in my classroom, some of the students, especially the boys, they are really into the song. But for the girls, they can't relate to the songs because it is something that they do not enjoy listening. But if I use songs, the more trending song, the newer songs, they really enjoy it. But if I use the very classic old songs like from Simple Plan, Hubestang, sometimes the girls they can't relate, but the boys yes.
Okay. Another question from me. Do you provide the students the reading materials before you teach the song or after you teach the song?
Okay, usually for my lessons, we start with listening first. Okay, we listen to the song, and then the speaking part where the students they will talk about any experience or any opinion about the song. Okay, and then the writing part. For reading, for example, if the topic requires them to read, then I will provide the reading materials. But usually it is more to listening, speaking, and writing. Because I really love the student to be able to speak. And when they are related to the topic, they don't have problems in speaking, even though the grammar, the vocabulary is sometimes incorrect. But to me, most importantly, the students are able to speak. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Last question from me.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you mentioned that you are teaching for the secondary school students, right? And then because of the new format of the writing paper for the SPM, so do you limit the students writing the word count? Like, every part of the writing paper we have the limit of the word count. So do you limit them when they do the essay writing?
Yeah, I do limit the number of words, but sometimes some students they ask for my permission if they can write more. And I never restricted my students. If they want to write more, they can. Even if they ask me if they can write less, I will not scold them and say, no, you cannot. I will encourage them because to me, the most important thing is the students are able to write. So that is the main point. But before the exam, of course, we want them to write according to the number of words. But if for learning purposes, no, there is no restrictions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Nope. And how about from our online audience? Any questions? Okay, so I have a question myself, Nancy. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Just wondering, your students have done so well with so many competitions, but I have a sort of a sneaky question. Did you enter them in competitions before you did introduce the cruise kit as well? And were they successful then?
Okay, so the cruise kit, actually, I have been teaching using songs since they were in Form 1, because I've been teaching the same class since they were in Form 1. So I think because of the lessons, because of the way I conduct my writing lessons since they were in Form 1 until now they're in Form 4, it actually gives them the ability to think creatively on their own. Okay, for example, in the video just now, two of the students, Shayan and Fariza, they have been in my class since they were in Form 1. So from there, I actually encourage them to be able to think on their own, to be creative in their own. And somehow I believe that it actually developed to now they are 16 and they are able to have that sense of self-confidence, to be able to speak in public, to be able to think on their own 2 feet. And even though I created this, I actually compiled the lesson plans for the writing kit this year. But I've started using songs from the first year of my teaching careers in 2010 until now. So that's why I've been using more than 30 songs actually, and I really enjoy it. And I am very glad that my students also enjoy the process of using songs in our classroom. But thank you for the question, Dr. Christina.
Actually, I have a follow-up question there. I mean, you're really lucky that you were able to follow these students or rather teach them through since Form 1. Not every teacher would have that opportunity. So what advice would you give to a teacher who might just be able to see these students for 1 year, you know, and then not be able to follow up the next year?
Make use of the time you have in the classroom. Okay? If you have the time, for example, do not restrict yourself when you want to use songs in your own classroom. And if you are able to do that, I think the students will remember your lessons for a long period of time. And even though you are not teaching them anymore, I think the students will learn on their own. Okay, for example, when they listen to a song, they can actually listen to the lyrics, they can relate themselves to lyrics, they can learn the sentence structures in the lyrics, they can think more than what is written in the lyrics. Okay, if you teach them well in that 1 year period, I think after that, even though you're not teaching them anymore, the students will be doing okay.
All right, thank you very much. Our time's up. Thank you very much. And we'll be back in a moment. Just give me a moment for the next speaker. Okay, welcome back. Next presenter is Ms. Susanna Anak Dalton Doel. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Doctor. Good morning, everyone.
And the title for her presentation is The Integration of Assessment Rubric into the Learning of Speaking Skills, Discovering its Effect on Pre-University ESL Students' Performance. Sounds interesting? Take it away, please.
All right, so good morning, everyone. So let us begin, yeah? All right, so good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Susanna Dalton Dowell, and today I'll be presenting my research entitled Integration of Assessment Rubrics into the Learning of Speaking Skills, yeah, discovering its effects on pre-university ESL students' performance. All right, so this presentation will consist of the introduction, literature review, the methodology, and all the findings, as well as the Q&A session. So allow me to begin by sharing the research background. All right, so globalization and internationalization.
Hold on a second. We're not seeing the full screen. Can you just click on the, yeah, there you are.
All right. Okay. All right, so globalization and internationalization are the two challenges that demand a dynamic transformation in the education system in Malaysia. So responding to such challenges is imperative, and more recently, the focus in educational policy has been on preparing all students for tomorrow's world, and the expectation for students have increased in breadth and depth. So the new education reform has to include all the three most important elements in teaching and learning process, which are curriculum, teaching strategy, and assessment. Now, assessment is a pivotal concept in the learning environment. It has been the primary mechanism for the gatekeeping role of schools. Now, if learning is the goal, dramatic changes are required in the way that assessment is used in classrooms. So this has caused classroom assessment to receive a lot of attention in recent years, as it is an inseparable aspect of the teaching and learning process. Now, the role of assessment is not simply to assess students on certain predetermined criteria and make judgments, but also to facilitate students' learning through a continuous process of feedback and provide them the opportunity to improve. Through assessment, students and teachers can reflect on the effectiveness of the lesson. One of the most promising recent contribution from educational research has been the work done to understand the role of assessment in the process of learning. Now, assessment in this conception of learning is much more than a summary or index of learning at the end. So when teachers use classroom assessment to become aware of the knowledge, skills, and beliefs that their students bring to a learning task, use this knowledge as a starting point for new instruction and monitor students' changing perceptions as instruction proceeds. Classroom assessment promotes learning. So the assessment reform group in England called this process assessment for learning. So the ideology that tests are isomorphic with learning is deeply embedded in Malaysian culture, so hindering the integration of using assessment as part of learning in classrooms to promote a more student-centered learning. So a required feature in the 21st century classrooms. So teach the test practices are still inevitable. So in Malaysia, the norm has been that teachers practice assessment of learning, and now is the time to focus more on assessment for learning. Although there are efforts made to promote assessment for learning, it is done sporadically, and assessment of learning still dominates classroom landscape. So the implementation of assessment for learning in the classrooms were deemed as less important compared to the end results in the summative assessment. So the contradiction between what is expected in a 21st century classroom assessment and what normally transpires in classroom is the motivation behind this research. Seeing assessment as crucial and influential to the teaching and learning process rather than something separate from it is an important shift in attitude that educators should note. To encourage assessment for learning in the classroom, students need to be actively involved in the lesson through constant feedback, questioning, peer assessment, and self-assessment. So in order to promote for assessment for learning in classroom, it requires use of various methods. So one method is by integrating assessment rubric as part of learning. It could be an effective tool to keep assessment for learning and learning itself in tandem. So a brief review on the literature. So Vygotsky developed the idea of zone of proximal development, which highlighted there are tasks that children can complete independently, but are able to do with some support from the environment, a peer or a teacher. So the assistance of others, individuals, active participation, and the quality of relations are important mediating factors in facilitating individual learning. So the assistance of others is perceived as scaffolding, an essential process of learning, as this reflects the mediated character of learning. So it helps an individual to move from a present developmental level to a more advanced one. To scaffold learning effectively, the teacher needs to assess and gain an understanding of the student's current knowledge and to intervene appropriately to move the students' learning forward. Now, assessment is now understood as a process of interaction and negotiation between the teacher, the student, and peers, in which students are encouraged to self-assess and monitor their own learning. So this theory also created a new approach for assessment in education, as it helped to shift the focus from only measuring what students have learned to also supporting students to progress in their learning. Thus, assessment must be formative in both function and purpose and should be incorporated into the teaching process to scaffold student learning and not a segregated activity at the end of the course to validate a student's achievement. So one beneficial learning tool that should be highlighted to create a more robust assessment for learning is the assessment rubrics. So the integration of assessment rubrics in teaching and learning fulfills the 4 intervention criteria disseminated by AFL, or Assessment for Learning, which are questioning, feedback through marking, peer and self-assessment, and formative use of summative tests. So some of the research that discuss the benefits of using rubric as part of formative assessments are by, for example, Andret and Ju, who interviewed 14 undergraduates after they used rubrics in class for solving assignments. So most of the students responded by saying that rubric helped them to produce higher quality work and to score better marks in the assignment. Next research is by Petkov and Petkova, who conducted a study in a postgraduate level. They used two groups of students, where one group was provided with a rubric with a project at the beginning of the semester, while the other group was not provided with a rubric. So later a comparison of students' grade from both groups showed that the group that used the rubric showed significantly higher grades compared to the students from the group that did not use the rubrics. So the theory that became the foundation of this research is meta-connection. So meta-connection is often referred to simply as thinking about thinking, which involve consciously planning, monitoring, and evaluating on learning. So it is often considered to have two dimensions: knowledge, the extent to which a learner is aware of and can articulate meta-connection strategies, and next, skillfulness, the actual capacity in managing learning or capability at putting these strategies into practice. So in practical terms, the intention is often to provide students with a repertoire of strategies to choose from during learning activities. So this often involves feedback on use of different strategies. So teaching approaches also frequently involve collaborative learning activities and techniques. So therefore, this research hopes to address the following gap. The first one is to highlight the need to shift the focus in classroom assessment from assessment of learning to assessment for learning. And there is also a paucity of literature on how rubrics can be used for informing course delivery and course design, and how rubrics bring about active engagement by students. Driven to highlight assessment for learning by integrating assessment rubric as learning tool to facilitate learning, this research aims to determine pre-university ESL students' views and examine the effects of integrating assessment rubrics as learning tool in speaking skills. So the research objectives are, the first one is to discover pre-university ESL students' views on the integration of assessment rubrics in the learning of speaking skills. And next one is to examine the effects of integrating assessment rubric in pre-university ESL students' performance in speaking. So the two research questions outlined in this research are: the first one, what are the pre-university ESL students' views on the integration of assessment rubric in the learning of speaking skills? And the next one is, how does pre-university ESL students with assessment rubric affect the quality of their performance in speaking? So the conceptual framework for this study includes the nature of speaking task as required in Malaysian University English Test or MUAT, instructional rubric as the intervention tool, and formative assessment cycle as the parameter in designing the process of integrating the intervention. So actual speaking tasks were used in the pre and post speaking test, so whereby students are assessed on 3 criteria: task fulfillment, language, and communicative ability. And then the 2 speaking tasks within the time frame given, there are 2 tasks: A, which is the individual presentation for 2 minutes, and task B, the group discussion, 8 to 10 minutes. To build a comprehensive framework for formative assessment, William and Thompson proposed 3 central processes. First one is to establish where learners are in their learning. Next one is establishing where they are going. And the third one is establishing how to get there. So they proposed that formative assessment could be built up from 5 strategies. So the first one is to clarifying, sharing, and understanding learning intention and criteria for success. Next one is engineering effective classroom discussion activities and learning tasks that elicit evidence of learning, providing feedback and move learners forward, activating learners as instructional resources for one another, activating learners as owners of their own learning. So the next key tool in the intervention is the instructional rubric. So a rubric is an assessment tool that lists the criteria for a piece of work or what counts, and articulates gradation of quality for each criterion from excellent to poor. Now, a rubric that is created for students, handed out, used to facilitate peer assessment, self-assessment, and teacher feedback, and only then used to assign grades, called instructional rubrics. So it is not about evaluation anymore, but about teaching as well. The instructional rubric refers to rubrics designed to support student learning and development in addition to serving as standard reference assessment tools. So instructional rubrics have several features that support student learning. They are written in language that students can understand. They define and describe quality work in as concrete terms as possible. They refer to common weaknesses in students' work and indicate how such weaknesses can be avoided, and they can be used by students to evaluate their work in progress and thereby guide revision and improvement. So next is the research methodology. So this research adopted a quantitative approach. The selected school is a secondary school in Samarahan district. So the selected school is a representation of most schools across the country, as it offers science and art streams for the pre-university students. Now, convenience sampling is used. The data collection is from population members who are conveniently available to participate in the study. So the researcher is currently working at the selected school, therefore have access to the school and students. So by using own students as samples, it provides convenience in data collection, and rapport has already been established. It is also time efficient because it allows the research to be conducted in the course of the researcher's everyday life. Pre-test, post-test design will be conducted to gather information to answer the research questions. The participants were 18 years old pre-university students. There were two groups, control and experimental group. One class of 24 pre-university students were in the control group, and while another class of 24 pre-university students were in the experimental group. So the control group was taught by a pre-university English teacher at the school without the exposure to assessment rubric. Meanwhile, the experimental group was exposed to the assessment rubrics and taught by the researcher. So the students were of mixed abilities, streamed according to their English SPM 1119 results. The instrumentations for this research were the assessment rubrics for speaking skill, questionnaire, and lesson plans. So the assessment rubrics for MUET speaking tasks are provided by the Malaysian Examination Council, the MEC. They are used in guiding teachers in assessing student speaking performance in accordance to the MEC requirement. So the assessment rubrics for speaking tasks in this research was adapted from the assessment rubrics provided by the MEC. However, to be able to utilize the assessment rubric as learning tools, some modifications were required. So after discussion with other pre-university English teachers to make a more student-friendly tools, more details were added to the description in the assessment rubric. So this is the assessment rubric used in the speaking task. So we have the task fulfillment criteria, the language, as well as the communicative ability. And this is for the communicative ability for the group discussion. All right. Next, the questionnaire was developed based on a 5-item Likert scale. So responses are given for each statement using a 5-point Likert style scale, for which 1 is strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. To answer the research questionnaire with total number of 66 items to elicit students' views on the usage of assessment rubrics in speaking tasks was administered to students in the experimental group post-intervention. So this is the outline for the questionnaire for the speaking skills. Right, so there are 4 main survey parts. Some of the items were on self-efficacy, task interests, behavioral engagement, cognitive engagement, reflect what students need most, task objective awareness, and a reflection of assessment task. So this is the outline for the speaking lesson plans. So experimental group was exposed to the speaking assessment rubric as learning tools throughout the 20 weeks of intervention. So the lesson plans were designed to few phases: introduction, modeling or guided practice, and practice and internalization. So in the introduction, phase, the researcher introduced speaking tasks to students, explaining the format and important elements required in the task. So this was followed by introduction to the assessment rubric and explanation of the criteria and description. In the modeling and guided practice phase, the researcher modeled the use of assessment rubric to the students. Students were guided on how to integrate the assessment rubric in their speaking tasks through guided trainings. Guided trainings include using Think Aloud protocol and use of sample speaking tasks or recordings. The next phase, the practice and internalization phase, regular trainings on how to integrate the assessment rubrics as learning tool through peer assessment and self-assessment among students was an integral part of the intervention. So students first practice integrating the assessment rubrics through group assessment before proceeding to pair assessment. After the students were able to demonstrate confidence and desirable comprehension of the effective steps to fully utilize the assessment rubrics, then they will start using it for self-assessment. So these are some of the example of lesson plans from each phase. This is from the introduction phase, the first phase. This is the outline. So this is an example of the lesson plan, whereby mostly the teacher guides students on the format and what are the items required in a speaking task. So next will be the modeling or the guided phase. So this will be the sample lesson plan. This will be one of the activities. So the teacher will guide the students on the thinking process on how to use the assessment rubric. And this is the third phase, whereby the students will practice using the assessment rubrics through peer assessment as well as self-assessment. All right, so in order to answer the research question, and the data from the questionnaire will be analyzed descriptively, looking at the mean and the standard deviation. Then to answer research question number 2, paired t-test was used to see any significant difference in the data collected from post-test for speaking within the experimental group. Meanwhile, unpaired t-test was used to see if there was any significant difference in the data between control and experimental group. So the findings are, to answer research question 1, what are the pre-university ESL students' views on the integration of assessment rubric in the learning of speaking skills? So in general, survey responses suggest that students view the rubric very positively. Participants agreed that the assessment rubric approach had positive effect towards the self-efficacy, behavioral engagement, cognitive engagement, self-regulated learning, task objective awareness, and reflection of assessment. Next, participants indicated they strongly agree that the assessment rubric approach has benefited their task interest or task value and reflect what students need the most. Independent t-tests and paired sample t-tests were conducted to answer the research question number 2. How does providing pre-university ESL students with assessment rubrics affect the quality of their performance in speaking? So independent sample t-test was employed to compare the p-test scores of the control and experimental group. So the purpose of this test was to find out the level of the student speaking performances before the integration of speaking assessment rubric approach. So the pre-test mean score for the control group is and the mean is 26.13. The standard deviation is 5.82. Meanwhile, the mean score for the experimental group is...
Your time is up, so can you just wrap up?
Oh, okay. All right. So basically, there is a significant difference in the score for the control group and experimental group. So from this, we can see that the rubric has positive impact on the students' speaking performances. So the role of assessment rubric in classroom should not merely be as a scoring tool. So it can also help students to conceptualize their learning targets and monitor their own progress. So they do value, students do value rubrics positively because it clarifies the main goal for their task, and this allows them to regulate their process and make grades or marks transparent and fair. And in conclusions, students are an underutilized resource that educators should include in all assessment and educational innovation, and rubrics are a positive addition to teachers' method as they can provide a meaningful way to plan for and interpret student learning. All right, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're open to questions now. Does anybody on the floor have any questions? Maybe you could come up closer. Thank you.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, my question is, how do you ensure that the students are not learning merely for assessment by using the rubric?
Well, we can see from their progress. That's where the teacher's role comes in, whereby when we are doing the task, the students are using the rubrics to prepare for the task. See that they're actually using the rubric in the process of their learning, in the process of completing the task. So that is one indication that they are actually using the rubric as assessment for learning, because they are using it during the process as well. So it's not merely used at the end of the task.
So maybe you could give us an example to follow up on that question. Like, can you give me an example of a particular speaking task? Yeah.
So normally the speaking tasks that I would provide for the students are actual MUET speaking questions. So we go from there. So the students are given the questions, and they brainstorm first the possible key points. And when I would ask them to draft out their speaking speech first. So they would use the assessment rubric when they are preparing for their speech. So they know that, for example, in the language, what are the language criteria, what are the things that they need to be careful of, or what they need to pay attention of in order to get more marks. For example, in the communicative ability part, they are constantly reminded based on assessment rubric that there's certain criteria that they have to be aware of in order to get better scores.
Any other questions from the floor? How about from online? Any questions from the audience online? Justin, do you have a question? No? So I do have a question. Using the rubric, students using the rubric while they are preparing for a task, I can see that. But do you ever then test their speaking skills without the rubric, meaning that in general, have their speaking skills improved? Do you know what I mean? They've done better in their assessment, but how about in day-to-day fluency, comprehension, and ability to respond appropriately? Is there any assessment of that?
Well, that will be done for myself in my class, and that is done on my part. There is no specific rubric for that, but I do monitor their fluency without using the assessment rubric.
So what I'm trying to say is that your study is whether the students who have that rubric and use it to prepare and then to do this assessment. You're testing to see whether they have their scores improve. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, in general, their fluency, does it improve? Meaning you've got your control group and you've got your experimental group, right?
Yes.
And all along as we teach, we're hoping that our students improve anyway, right? That at the end of the year, they're going to be better than they were in the beginning of the year. Apart from the actual assessments, to gauge how they are doing in terms of their fluency and so on.
The fluency, I wouldn't say there is a marked improvement, but there is improvement because they gain more confidence after few practices with the rubric. So they do gain more confidence. So when they have more confidence, it affects their fluency to improve as well. I wouldn't say there is a marked, a very contrast difference improvement, but there is a glimpse of hope of improvement.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll be back for the last speaker. Just give me a few minutes. Thank you, Susanna. All right, and welcome everybody to our final speaker for this morning, or rather this early afternoon. Our presenter is Mr. Amir Hussain Mohammadi Meskini, and the title of his presentation is The Effect of Web-Based Interventionist Dynamic Assessments on Iranian EFL Learners' Writing Fluency. Are you there? Are you there, Mr. Amir Hussain? Jocelyn, do you know who is AL? Oh, that's Ali. He's not here. He doesn't seem to be here. Did you notice whether he checked in earlier?
Wasn't in.
He wasn't in earlier, huh? Sorry, everybody, just hold on while we're trying to track down the presenter. I'm trying to his name actually. Oh, thanks very much. Yeah.
I don't want to be on camera.
He was trying to help
Yeah.
to find this dude. I don't know whether he.
Just now I met Ida as well. She said if let's say he doesn't show up in 5 or 10 minutes plus, we just wait for lunch.
Okay.
And see whether can reach him or not.
Yeah, that's right. Because Kokhu, who is the guy who's been in charge mostly that I've been dealing with, I think he's tied up in the lecture theatre with the Adobe thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've been seeing responses in group email to us about people on their presentations, but I never saw this guy's name, so I assume he's present. Yeah. Iranian, so I wonder if he's actually from Iran, because earlier we had an Indonesian speaker.
I know, is that the one for room, BB's room? One of the papers is actually cancelled.
Oh.
So they will end earlier.
But they told,
yeah, already.
They already informed, right? Yeah, that's the thing.
So this one, I think we can wait for another 5 minutes maybe. Let's see whether he can reach him or not.
Yeah, yeah. You told us to wear red shirts, but everybody else is not wearing red Swindon shirt. Oh.
Yeah.
So you see a few chairs wearing red shirts, including Popping, me, Elaine. And I saw Bibi wearing baju kurung. I was like, oh no, whatever. And then I told Jenny and Esther, and they're going to wear their red shirts. I was kind of wondering about that. I was thinking, I'm the chair. Should I be wearing Never mind. end this session for now. So where's lunch, Justin?
Should be outside.
Okay, so please go ahead for lunch, but no eating in these rooms. Thank you. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoy the afternoon session. So should I leave?
And Helma.
Oh, yes, that's right, Helma.
I think she heard.
Yeah, all right. Oh, okay, she's gone. So Justin, I'll sign out of there so
Okay.
that you can sign in. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just. Or actually.